All right. Well, this evening, we are up to chapter 17, verse 1. This is a fairly lengthy passage, and it's already 20 till, so I can tell you now.
Through this one tonight.
What's that?
We ain't getting through this one tonight.
No, we are not getting through
This is
chapter
a long
17
chapter. It's
tonight.
2.5 pages long.
Yeah, it's like about 3 pages worth, so. But we'll get as far as we get. All right. Now, as you will recall from chapter 16, we were up to the point where the Philistines had challenged the Israelites. They had, the Israelites had routed them, and the battle had kind of come to a halt. But at this point, God has sent an evil spirit to torment Saul. And so then chapter 17 sort of begins the next iteration where the Philistines come back out and try once again to challenge the Israelites to battle. Now it's interesting to me that they didn't just plan a sneak attack. They intentionally wanted to draw them out into an open area and do battle with them. Now, one thing I will mention, there is a particular battle technique, if you can call it that. It really wasn't a technique so much as just a custom that apparently the Philistines claimed to practice, but that the Israelites, to our knowledge, had never done that. There's no indication that they were even aware of it until they were challenged this by the Philistines. However, even the Philistines that claimed to practice this, when they ended up losing, didn't hold up their end of the bargain. They turned and ran for the hills, which is this. They could do, army against army battle in the valley, or, and this is what the Philistines challenged them to, said, send out the best one that you got, and we'll let our two champions do battle with each other. Save the rest of us, and whoever loses, well, we will voluntarily be slaves to the winner. That's what they really expected the Israelites to do, because they were convinced that Goliath would, as their champion, would win. They didn't think there was any possibility that this Jewish army was in any way going to beat them in battle, much less that a champion of the Jewish army was going to beat Goliath. And by the way, the one thing that I neglected to mention earlier, in the previous battle, when it was champion against champion, and here we see Goliath calling them out. Goliath basically, as we will see, encouraged the Israelites to send out the best one that they had. Well, who of all the Israelite warriors was probably the tallest and the biggest one of the bunch?
Saul.
Saul himself. Exactly. What's that?
Big chicken.
Uh-huh.
Well, he's having a rough time right now.
But would they have sent out the king and put him
The
in?
Philistines were hoping.
Well, I know, but it doesn't make sense.
All right.
Well, in times before that, it was the guy who led in battle and won who became the king.
Right.
So you had to be able to win in battle to be the king.
Which is also explains, if you look forward on that, why originally Saul really liked David. Now, of course, obviously Saul was unaware David had been anointed to be his replacement. I think it's common sense tells us that, at least at this point, his brothers have not ratted him out.
Yeah.
Or Saul would have sought to kill him. However, after Saul wins in battle against Goliath, it doesn't take Saul very long at all to decide David's got to go. because he's just too much competition.
Yeah, in the series The House of David, right after he gets anointed and he gets called in to be the harp player for Saul, his oldest brother is like doing everything he can to keep David from blundering into giving up the fact that he's the one who was anointed.
Mm-hmm.
So he's doing everything he can to protect his little brother from bringing Saul's wrath down on him.
All right. Verse 1 says, Now the Philistines gathered their armies for battle, and they were gathered at Soko, which belongs to Judah. That basically tells you they were in the eastern part of Judah territory. To get from Philistia to Judah meant they had to cross about 20 or 30 miles of Israelite territory to get there. And they camped between Soko and Azekah in Ephah's Demim. And Saul, and by the way, we're not going to bother looking up where all these places are because it's not really that important to the story. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered and camped in the valley of Elah and drew up in battle array to encounter the Philistines. The Philistines stood on the mountain on one side, while Israel stood on the mountain on the other side with the valley between them. Now, not to, to even mention, but of course I realize that by not mentioning, I'm mentioning it.
Yep.
The fact that the battle would normally take place in the valley, why do you think they would camp opposite each other on a mountainside?
So they can't easily be attacked.
Everybody
Well,
wants to be on high ground.
All of that, all of that from a tactical perspective is true. But from a more practical perspective, when you've got one large group on a mountain here and a large group on a mountain here with a valley between them, consider the acoustics. You can yell across a valley and be heard for miles. And what is it that the Philistines are trying to get the Israelites to do?
Quit.
Yeah, well, Goliath walks out to the valley floor and shouts at them to send out the best one you got. Well, with a mountain on either side in this valley floor, his voice would have echoed all through the valley. Normally, like for example, if I were to walk out in my backyard and just start yelling, you could be 100 yards off onto the golf course and you might hear me yelling, but you wouldn't have a clue what I was saying. But in a situation like that, I mean, look at peoples that live in mountainous areas, like in Switzerland, for example.
That way they call the valleys between the mountains a holler?
I don't know about that, but I mean, people traditionally that have lived in mountainous areas, communicate very well across the valley because the acoustics is such that a voice will echo all through that valley. Goliath could have stood there on the valley floor and shouted at him, and they would have had no problem at all hearing him and understanding exactly what he was saying. All right. Verse 4. Then a champion came out from the armies of the Philistines named Goliath from Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. By the way,
what span is this?
Span is that, about 6 inches. So 6 cubits and a span. The man was about 9 feet 6 inches tall. Now, it is possible that Goliath could have just, as a mutant, been that tall simply if he was suffering from what we today call giantism. But a lot of people believe that it's possible that through some genetic mix-ups and what have you, that this might have been the remnants of what prior to the flood would have been referred to as Nephilim. Now, I'm not saying that somebody besides the 8 people on the ark survived the flood, but where this has been explained, if Goliath and his brothers were Nephilim is that somewhere one of these disobedient demons tried it again, or we know where the DNA of Noah and his 3 sons came from, but there's one variable on the people that were on the ark that we don't know.
The families, the wives.
The wives. We have no idea where those 4 wives came from and whether or not they may have had some tainted DNA in their genes. And all it takes is one at some point in the past for that to eventually reappear a few generations down the road.
It's interesting that you bring up the subject of the possibility of the demons engaging in nefarious activities again as a possibility, because that's what was brought up in the book The Unseen Realm. That he even makes reference back to the original reference in Genesis about the Nephilim, that they were on the earth in that time and after. That reference, and after. He ties that into meaning the reference to after the flood. Because if it was buried in the DNA, it might have taken a fair amount of time to surface again. And it would have taken some intermarrying between 2 people with that same DNA to make that happen, really, essentially. It seems more probable to me that the demons thought, well, we polluted the gene pool once, we can do it again.
And that's entirely possible. But if that, or however it might have happened, would explain why, since God had promised he would never again send a flood, he told the Jews when they invaded Canaan, kill all of them. Let none of them survive. Because if they had tainted DNA, I mean, it wouldn't have just simply been that God was trying to get rid of pagan influences, although that was part of it. God may have known something DNA-wise they weren't aware of. So, anyway, 9 feet 6 inches tall. Verse 5 said, and he had a bronze helmet on his head, and he was clothed with scale armor, which weighed 5,000 shekels of bronze. By the way, 5,000 shekels is equivalent to about 126 pounds. So this man, and this would also explain why later that when Saul tried to give his armor to David, David said, I can't carry all this. But Saul's armor weighed 126 pounds. And he had a bronze greaves, in other words, the little shin guards, on his legs, and a bronze javelin slung between his shoulders. And the shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, which, by the way, a weaver's beam, anybody know how long a weaver's beam tends to be?
8 or 9 feet.
Yep, about 8 or 9 feet long. And the head of his spear weighed 600 shekels of iron.
It also shows that even the Philistines were still in a transitional period between bronze and iron. They might have had some iron weapons, but their armor was still bronze.
Yep. Now, when it says his spear weighed 600 shekels, it weighed 15 pounds.
Just the head of the spear, let alone the weight of the beam.
Yep. His shield carrier also walked before him, which tells us that not only is he a big guy, but just to have somebody that can carry all that stuff, he had to have somebody, an extra man out there just to carry his shield. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Are bronze and brass the same thing?
Nope.
No, they're similar, but
Because my King James Version says brass everywhere. You said
Wow,
you're reading
that's a
from
poor
bronze.
translation.
yeah. That basically is just a matter of translation. Keep in mind, it's not saying that they disagree with each other. In metallurgy, bronze and brass are not the same thing. However, when you're dealing with a translation, the word that is used that in one case is translated bronze and in your case translated brass, that's just simply the translator's choice.
King James you're reading from?
KJV.
All right. Verse 8. And he stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel and said to them, why do you come out to draw up in battle array? Am I not the Philistine, and you servants of Saul? By the way, notice here that he's characterized them all as nothing but a bunch of slaves. Choose a man for yourselves, and let him come down to me. Here's Goliath's first challenge to them. Notice again, he doesn't invite the whole, army to engage in battle. He wants them to choose somebody to come fight me. Now, they know that Saul is probably the biggest one of the bunch. But I'm sure because they also know that Saul is the king, the likelihood that they're going to send their king down isn't going to happen. Verse 9 says, and if he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will become your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall become our servants and serve us. Well, that's what they were betting on.
Yeah, it was a one-way deal.
Yeah, it was one-way deal here. Because they were very confident there's no way in the world the Israelites are going to win. Now, this is another reason why they were pushing for this one-on-one battle, because in the last few times that the Israelites and the Philistines have gone against each other in battle, who won?
The Israelites.
The Israelites did. So they're not quite as confident that they can win it against the Israelites in battle, because they know the Israelites are blessed by their God. But if they can succor one man to come down, surely Goliath can beat whoever they pick, because figure Goliath was probably taller and bigger than all of them. So they want to get the Israelites to agree to this one-on-one contest, and figure that the Israelites, if Goliath won, would just voluntarily put down their weapons and allow the Philistines to enslave them again. Anyway, verse 10 says, again the Philistines said, I defy the ranks of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. When Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistines, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Now that's as far as we're going to get tonight. So we're going to pick up with verse 12 on Wednesday.
Oh, man.
Well, sorry, that's all the time we got.
Questions about verse 12.
All right, what's your question? But we'll start. We're still going to pick up verse 12 on Wednesday.
This name for Jesse.
The Ephrathite
Yeah, the Ephrathite of Bethlehem. What's that mean?
just means that was the Ephrathites were a family within Bethlehem.
And Jesse was of the Ephrathites?
Uh-huh.
But he's still from the tribe of Judah, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bethlehem was in Judah territory.
An Ephrathite is just a family within Judah?
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
Wasn't as difficult as you thought.
Just, I never saw that title before. I probably did, but I never read
Notice it didn't say Ephraimite, it
Yeah.
said Ephrathite.
Ephrathite. I caught that. It was close, but not the same.
Well, anyway, notice there in verse 11, it said that the Jews were shaking in their boots over this. Because, again, the biggest one of the bunch was Saul. And Saul was himself too chicken to go out there and do anything about this.
And Saul himself was probably at least 3 feet shorter.
Probably, because even if Saul had been, say,
6'6" or
6'6",
6'8".
6'7", he then would have been looking up at Goliath
Yeah.
like this. And Saul ain't going out there. Because we know Saul's all, a lot of hot air, but Saul's chicken. And because the Israelites figured our king and the biggest one of the bunch of us is afraid to go out there, we ain't going out there. By the way, and we'll see this and get more detail about this on Wednesday, but this went on for 40 days.
Yeesh.
All right, questions this evening?
A lot of hungry soldiers out there on those mountaintops.
Well, we'll discuss that too. All right.